Good morning. Merry Christmas. It's almost New Year. Today I thought we would talk about the biggest misconceptions when it comes to Bitcoin.
Do you think Bitcoin is a fraud?
Yes. The biggest problem I see with Bitcoin, why I would never buy it, is that they could steal them from you. Like they hack into your phone or something. I know people that have lost all their money like that.
So, full disclosure, I have invested a little bit in Bitcoin. I have stored it on an external hard drive, so it should be completely safe for hacker attacks, so don't even try. I feel like this is really important to put out there in the beginning of this video, seeing as there's two camps. There's the people who say Bitcoin is a conspiracy theory.
Why is Bitcoin a fraud? Here's the reason. Governments, they like to control the currency. They control it through a central bank. They also like to know who has it. Wait until someone gets hurt. Wait until it's used for illicit purposes, which it is somewhat used for illicit purposes. They close it down.
And there's the side that thinks that Bitcoin is going to save the economic system as we know it. Well, in the sense that it's going to replace it.
You both made the point when you were on the morning show. Now people could put their money where their mouths are, right? Because you've got people like Jamie Dimon calling Bitcoin a fraud. So if you think it's a fraud, go short it.
Absolutely, yeah. We've been working really hard to give Jamie Dimon an opportunity to short Bitcoin. And anybody who says that, it's a fraud or a bubble, you can go now, put your money where your mouth is and bet against it. Bitcoin, we think of Bitcoin as gold. And I think if you look at gold, some people point to an intrinsic value of gold, but that really doesn't explain the value of gold. It might explain 10, 15% of the actual value of gold. Gold has value because we all agree that it has value, and we'll all accept gold. And it has a collective acceptance and value that way. Bitcoin, in addition to being increasingly accepted around the world and more people coming into the system by the day, has the mining network, which is one of the largest computer networks in the world, and it's backed by cryptography. A lot of people would look at the US dollar or government-backed currencies and say a government has counterparty risk. The average lifespan of a currency is roughly 27 years. Look no further than the Zimbabwe dollar. They have, I think, $1 trillion bill, or Venezuela. The history of most currencies is really terrible.
And I must admit, I'm probably in that camp. I really do believe that this has a lot of positive and very, very transparent features that I feel the current economic system has been lacking since it really started. All of that being said, this will be my top 5 misconceptions when it comes to Bitcoin or crypto in general. Let's get into it. And yes, if you're new to the concept, this is what I call a vlogumentary. If you're new to the channel, then subscribe. It's extremely difficult to make these. If my parents watch this video, they're probably going to give me a hard time about that. So, vlogumentary, the concept is pretty simple. We talk about an important topic throughout my day. And yeah, it does get a little bit confusing sometimes, so do feel free to ask any questions you want in the comments down below. First of all, before I drive anywhere, I really love to look into the lens and have that, I'm not able to do that while I'm driving, and I do have to go to a meeting in Herning today, so feel free to hate me for looking this way when I'm talking, but I have to do that. It's required by law. I'm sorry. The first thing I want to talk about today is the fact that everyone is saying Bitcoin's a bubble, Bitcoin's a bubble.
The size and scale of this initial rally we've seen in Bitcoin, stepping away from yesterday, versus other stock market rallies is what? Put that in perspective for us.
In terms of stock market, there's just no example of any stock market of any breadth doing anything remotely like this. If you begin to look into commodities, which are more like what people perceive Bitcoin as being, it's still pretty much off the charts, gold or silver. Apart
from when you bring in tulip bulbs, which you've done a lot of analysis on.
Which are also commodities of a kind, yes. If you look at the tulip mania in Holland in the 1600s, there were a number of things that were very similar. Tulips were new to Europe at the time. There were such things as tulip derivatives. You could get certificates for taking control of tulips. They changed the regulations, and yes, you saw the final few months of the tulip craze. You did see a rise that was even greater than what we've seen in the last year or so in Bitcoin.
Keep in mind, I'm not an expert on this, but everything that I have been able to find that I feel like is legitimately transparent points towards this not actually being a bubble. The issue is, it can become a bubble if it all fails. The system itself is not perfect. So if that is the case, bear with me, let me explain this. basically what cryptos and blockchain technology allows is for a decentralized economic system where we don't need banks or governments, actually. Very scary, I know.
The question we now have to ask is if technologically it is possible to make an impenetrable device or system where the encryption is so strong that there's no key, there's no door at all, then how do we apprehend the child pornographer? How do we disrupt a terrorist plot? What mechanisms do we have available to even do simple things like tax enforcement? Because if in fact you can't crack that at all, government can't get in, then everybody's walking around with a Swiss bank.
What's really, really, really great about this, the entire system can be transparent and we can see everything that's going on at any time. Meaning no one can defraud in taxes. We can see what assets every person have at all times, which I see a tremendous value in. Now keep in mind, I do have Bitcoin, I do have skin in the game. I am also not an expert, so don't take everything I say as 100% undoubted truth. I really do encourage you to check up on everything I say, because I do try and make this as transparent a conversation as possible. See, the people who are against this, the people who say that cryptos in general are a bubble, are people who most of the time are either bank CEOs or very, very rich individuals who honestly stand to lose their entire purchasing power if this system is put into place and they don't have any of it converted into Bitcoin in time. Let's just go with Bitcoin. I mean, we could talk about Ethereum or Litecoin, and Ethereum or Litecoin might actually be better examples because Ethereum has the smart contracts which could run entire governments and render those literally useless. Or Litecoin, where we know the owner and the owner just sold all of his own shares in Litecoin, meaning he no longer have any financial incentive to actually make this become a thing, but he's still working on it because he sees the value this could create for equality and for general standard of living throughout the world. See, if you're a person living in this world, you put your trust or your purchasing power in these middlemen who, let's just be a little bit frank, keep messing up in the sense that we have boom-bust cycles. We have crises, then we have booms, and then we have a new crisis. That's actually not because they f*** up. That's because that's how the economic system works. That's how our entire society works. And that comes down to a lot of different things. Some economists say it's because, well, as an individual, you would never deduct yourself in pay. So if your pay consistently grows throughout your life and it can never go the other way, then so does the items you purchase with your wealth have to always inflate a little bit in prices. And that doesn't make some sort of sense. The issue with that is not really what's going on. See, what's going on is that the middlemen, or well, the Federal Reserves, really, the people that can inflate the fiat currencies, have the power to steal your purchasing power. Let's take an example. I feel like I need to explain this. If there's only 100 bills in circulation, 100 bills in total in this example, let's say you have the 100 bills. That means you can buy anything in the world because you have all of the purchasing power in the world. If the bank then decides to print another 100, they have effectively cut your purchasing power in half. You can now only buy half as much for the $100 than you could previously. That is the dangerous part. That is why people see such an immense value in cryptos. Because Bitcoin cannot be inflated. There's a cap. There's a limit to, I believe it is 21 million Bitcoins. And there can never be mined a second one. And this kind of leads me into my second misconception. The first one being, is it a bubble? Where my answer really is, it is a bubble until it actually takes over the financial system. If you see the interest in that, and most people will, like as soon as the next bust cycle happens, everyone is gonna jump on crypto because cryptos will not lose their value. There is no middleman, there is no government that can inflate that value. Take Venezuela, for instance. Venezuela saw a 1600% inflation rate this year. That is insane. You could have worked for 50 years, put all of your purchasing power, all of your wealth into this Venezuelan currency, and then within 48 hours, boom, all of it is gone, and you can go down and spend millions and buy what? A loaf of bread? No one can keep up with that, and it destroys lives. So as soon as people understand this distinction, no one is going to want to use the fiat currencies anymore.
The average lifespan of a currency is roughly 27 years.
And this is a very dangerous thing. You need to keep that in mind, because the banks and the people who are making money on the current economic system, or the people who have money in the current economic system, are not interested in this happening. So they kind of have to debunk it or make it sound like the tulip fever in the 1600s, that, oh, it's going to be a bust, it's a bubble, it's never going to work out.
When they more or less did match tulips, but that's the one example you can come up with of any significance.
And of course, we know how the tulip bulb rise ended, which was with a catastrophic fall, of course.
Yep.
Now, if we try and work out some of the possible reasons that could justify this huge run-up in Bitcoin, one that you kind of point to in the article is, of course, the unprecedented printing of money that we have had, that many thought would either lead to a spike in inflation or gold prices. Clearly, inflation hasn't spiked. Is there a possibility that that could explain this, and it's just that this is the currency or commodity that is reacting to that huge wave of money?
There's certainly something to that, yes, although I'm still not clear why you wouldn't just make it gold, which has worked very well whenever you've been worried about debasement of paper currencies in the past, and gold, of course, for the last few years has done nothing special at all. I think where it does fit in, and I've been getting an awful lot of feedback about what I've been writing, obviously, where it does fit in is it fits with the mood of radical distrust in central banks, and I can't blame people for feeling distrustful after the last 10 years, and in governments more broadly. There's this very exciting possibility that this fits in with the notion of a world without governments, and if you are in a stage where you really don't trust democracy, let alone central banks, there's something exciting about Bitcoin.
That was misconception number one. Misconception number two is that it's a bad thing even if it is a bubble. Because it really is. When you think about any system, any store of value in this world, it's effectively a bubble. Housing is a bubble. The internet was a bubble. It is still a bubble. Everything that has value has to be a bubble. It has to be inflated because demand is what drives it. Supply and demand is put together in this world of scarcity. I think everyone knows what I mean. There's simply going to be a connection between how much we actually have and how much we're willing to pay. If it's easy to get, no one's going to want to pay a lot for it. When we talk about this bubble as being a bad thing, it is actually because in a fiat system where you can get into these boom-bust cycles, people lose everything they have when it goes bust. Misconception number 3 is that miners can take advantage of the system. There is a thing called bad miners. Miners can actually attempt to take over the system, but doing that is by design almost impossible, because that person or that community of bad miners needs to take on the rest of the world, and there are so many. They need to consistently beat out the rest of the world who are good miners. And the entire system, the entire reason why the equations keep getting harder and harder is because it needs to cost a certain amount of electricity to run the algorithms to keep making the incentives to be bad smaller. See, you get paid in Bitcoin, meaning your incentive to destroy Bitcoin is diminished. You get paid a fixed rate. Miners cannot change the rate they get paid. You kind of decide the rate when you make the transaction. This does also, once again, diminish the incentive for the miners to actually be bad, because they cannot control the prices. That is the biggest misconception I see in newspapers here in Denmark right now. Everyone is talking about how, oh, Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, or well, crypto in general, really, he created a ledger and we don't really know who it is. It's an acronym. It could be a group of people, it could be a person. We don't really know, and to be quite frank, I don't really care, because the whole argument that, oh, we don't know who it is, so he's just gonna get super rich from this. I mean, he was the inventor. I don't mind him getting rich. I kind of feel like he deserved to get rich since he invented the system. just like every other system ever. If you invent something new, you deserve to get credit for it and live off of the monetary gains you should get from that. When we then talk about these bad miners, that argument really also goes out the window. And when it comes to people, the biggest misconception I've actually probably heard, this should actually really have been number one, but you get what I mean. But this is just a conversation. Okay, so now we've debunked the bad miners, we've debunked the whole bubble mentality, and we've debunked the whole tulip fever, oh, it's gonna bust thing.
I'm not saying go short, because I know Jim Jonas was up here. You know, Bitcoin can sell $100,000 of Bitcoin before it goes down. So this is not advice on what you do.
The next thing I want to talk about is the fact that Bitcoin can be used to do illegal stuff. If you actually look at the graphs, Bitcoin is not number one when it comes to buying guns or drugs or anything. Because most of the people who actually use Bitcoin to finance their illegal activities make sure that there's actual proof in the blockchain that they have done something illegal at this time. There's a timestamp and there's a transaction number and there's an amount. These three things will be in the blockchain forever. This is why blockchain technologies are way better at actually catching criminals once they use cryptocurrencies to finance it. If they had just used cash, there would be no way of tracking it if we didn't know the individual number on all of the bills they've used. In crypto, if you know something bad has happened, you can go back in the blockchain and check. So doing something illegal in cryptos is like putting up a sign where you committed the crime saying, the person with this responding number got this at this time to do this at this point. And yes, you can't really see why they got it, but trust me, accountants will not have any trouble putting those things together. So doing illegal stuff with cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin in general is really stupid. That's also the dumbest misconception, I would probably be a little bit harsh and say. The next thing I really feel just boils my blood whenever someone says it is that Bitcoin itself will win no matter what, because of all of the things I just said. That is simply not the case. See, yes, it is true that I believe that a cryptocurrency will take over the economic system at some point simply because of all the benefits. I can transfer money to everywhere in the world with no wait time and almost no fees, compared to having to wait about 14 days and pay almost 10% in exchange rates and transfer fees and bank transfer fees, and there's just immense amount of wasted efforts going into the existing system when it comes to exchanges and transfers, and the entire middleman business really is obsolete today because of this crypto, because of the possibilities that crypto really offers. So I do see a cryptocurrency take over at some point, but that it is going to be Bitcoin simply because it's the most famous one. It's just not the case. We don't know what crypto is going to take over. It could be Ethereum, it could be Litecoin, it could be Dogecoin for what matters. Like, it could be any coin, because making a cryptocurrency is incredibly easy. I've actually created my own. I'll put it here. I call it Bjerg coin. I created this in probably half a day. It does not take that long. This of course is missing the whole mining bit. Like, I need to actually have the computing power to run all of these algorithms, and the algorithms keep getting harder and harder. But this is essentially all a blockchain needs to have to function. So they really can't, there's no killing the concept. Even if they outlaw Bitcoin or cryptos in general, there's still really no stopping it, because it's a decentralized system. You can't, it's like the internet. You can't turn off the internet like that. I mean, and even an EMP wouldn't stop cryptos, because you can actually make transfers on a piece of paper. You don't need the internet or electricity really. You just need, it would take a lot more time to run the algorithms, but you would still be able to do it. So we don't know that Bitcoin is going to win. A lot of people are assuming that it's Bitcoin or nothing. Bitcoin is actually not, in my opinion, the most attractive one right now. Now I'm talking in Danish as well. I have this entire setup. It's been working wonders. So well, in fact, that I've been rambling for 35 minutes and now it has no more battery. I am outside where I'm gonna have the meeting now. It's in this building right here. I really wish this was all that has gone wrong, because I also tried to fly my drone, which was impossible because apparently the gimbal got damaged. So this is the only footage I was able to get. I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but I don't think I can blame the banks. To be continued, I guess.